This is a view from the virtual cockpit. Many players new to the game do not utilize this feature, but eventually many pilots come to rely almost exclusively on the virtual cockpit during combat. Picture this. You're entering a dogfight with your plane going head-to-head with the enemy. You pass each other with guns blazing, but neither of you scores a hit. Now, where did your enemy go? You can look around for him in the standard side and back views, but there's no guarantee that you'll find him. Let's rewind to the beginning of that pass. Before you get too close, press Alt F1 to enter virtual cockpit mode. When you see the enemy in your sights, press the J key. This is known as padlocking. Your view will move to keep the enemy plane centered on your screen.
The Battle of Coral Sea occurred when American troops tried to dislodge Japanese forces seeking to push their way deeper into Australia. Throughout this battle, both American and Japanese forces struggled with a new way of fighting. For the first time, enemy ships were forced to battle without seeing each other. On the morning of May 4th, 12 TBD torpedo planes and 28 SBD dive bombers leave the deck of the Yorktown at 0630 hours to dislodge the Japanese presence on Tulagi Beach. At 0815 hours, scout bombers dropped their first bombs, 1,000-pounders, on the gathered ships at Tulagi Harbor, sinking 2 small ships and forcing the destroyer Kikuzuki to be beached. 5 minutes later, at 0820 hours, the 2nd American attack group storms in and sinks the sweeper Tamamaru. At 1100 hours on May 6th, a land-based search plane spots Admiral Fletcher's force and radios its position to the Japanese. The message is not received in time, costing the Japanese an opportunity to strike. The next day, at 0736 hours, Japanese planes misidentify the American oiler Neosho and the destroyers Sims as a carrier and a cruiser, precipitating an all-out attack and costing the Japanese precious fuel and munitions. Within an hour, an American search plane makes a similar error, mistaking Japanese Admiral Marumo's group of relatively unimportant cruisers and gunboats as the Japanese strike force. Admiral Fletcher sends an attack group to destroy Marumo's ships. At 1100 hours, an attack group from the Lexington on its way to attack Marumo's ships happens across the carrier Shoho and its escorts. Over the next 15 minutes, 93 planes attack and destroy the Shoho. Only 3 American planes are lost. At 1200 hours, 3-quarter-ton bombs strike the Sims. 2 of them explode in the engine room and she begins to sink. The Sims explodes again just as she's disappearing below the surface, killing most of the men who abandoned her. There are only 16 survivors. The oiler Neosho meets a similar fate at 1202, with 7 direct hits and 8 near misses, turning her into smoking flotsam and killing over 400 men. At 1358, Admiral Crace's group survives an attack by no less than 45 planes. There are no hits and no casualties. At 1630, 27 Japanese attack planes, on their way back from an unsuccessful search for the Yorktown and Lexington, run into a group of American Wildcats. 9 Japanese and 2 Americans are shot down. On the morning of May 8th, at 0822 hours, search planes from Zuikaku and Shokaku spot the Lexington and the Yorktown. The search planes lead the Japanese attack planes directly to the American ships. At 0838 hours, the Zuikaku and Shokaku are spotted by American search planes from the Lexington. Strike forces launch immediately.
Pre-war American carriers progressed from experimental designs through conversions prompted by naval limitation treaties and ended with the Yorktown class. In an amazing stroke of luck for the U.S. fleet, no carriers were present at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked.
The U.S. Navy ordered an early prototype of what was to become Grumman's first monoplane carrier-based fighter in July of 1936, under the designation XF-4F-2. The aircraft was designed to meet a U.S. Navy requirement which originated in 1935. Ironically, the original prototype was passed over in favor of the Brewster F-2, an aircraft which was to prove even less suited for dogfighting the superior Japanese aircraft. A revised prototype, nicknamed Wildcat, was built with a more powerful two-stage supercharged engine. The XF-4F-3 first flew on February 12, 1939, and was ordered by the Navy the same year. Nearly 8,000 Wildcats were built by both Grumman and, from 1942 on, by General Motors. The Wildcat was widely used in the Pacific theater, particularly in the battles of Midway, Coral Sea, and the attack on Guadalcanal. Despite the fact that it was outclassed by the Zero, the Wildcat was invaluable in the early stages of the war and remained in first-line service through the end of the war, although from 1943 on, it was slowly replaced by more capable fighters.
The Pacific Air War that raged during 1942 was one of the epic conflicts in human history. 25 years after the first tentative flight off a makeshift carrier deck, both Japanese and American pilots were relearning the fundamentals of air combat developed by the aviators of World War I. Be aware. Know your aircraft and your enemy. Speed and altitude are light. Now the pilots were embroiled in a Second World War. The airplanes were faster, more maneuverable, and packed a bigger punch. But the words of German ace Adolf Galland still held true. Only the spirit of attack, born in a brave heart, will bring success to any fighter aircraft, no matter how highly developed it may be. The Pearl Harbor raid that began the Pacific War also ushered in a new era of naval combat. Naval tactics had revolved around the big guns of the battleship and the cruiser. Opposing admirals would move close to each other and blast away.